we borrowed from the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Therefore, the first thing which is important on that is to recognize that the primary responsibility to realize these rights lies on the government. A democratically elected government would have been voted into office on the basis of the manifesto and the pronouncement of its leaders on the policies and programs they would put in place to realize these rights once elected. The second point to take into account is that it is accepted that these rights are not immediately achievable due to the many reasons, including insufficient resources. Therefore, the responsibility on the shoulders of the government is to achieve these rights progressively. And there, the word progressively has been used both in our Constitution, Article 21(2) of the Constitution, if you read it, and also in the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, to which Kenya is a party. So, it is there. The number one issue, as you know, in Kenya today is the unprecedented high cost of living, which is causing unbearable suffering, misery, anxiety, and hunger among the populace in Kenya. As a prominent church leader has stated, we are strangling the lives of the poor Kenyans. History is replete with examples where people in countries facing a national crisis come together to fight the threat. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere used to say that just as in UK, for example, everybody came together to face the threat to the nation caused by Germany, which led to the Second World War. So we in Africa are in a state of war, and it is a war against ignorance, poverty, and disease. And this war can only be won if we all come together. In this national crisis, it calls on the government and all the people to humble themselves and collectively and in a sober manner address the issue. I am therefore suggesting to this National Dialogue Committee that a national consultation on the national economic crisis be convened to come up with recommendations not only to ameliorate the high cost living costs, but also make people better understand the bitter medicine and hard decisions that must be taken to put the economy on the right track. Such a national consultation should include political leaders, religious leaders, professionals, economists, business and farming communities, opinion makers, etc. The national consultation should be convened immediately a report is approved by Parliament. Let me take this opportunity also to make reference to Article 204, since it touches on Article 43. And Article 204 provides for equalization of equalization funds, but it is targeted at groups which were discriminated against during the colonial time. And although marginalized areas is not defined in the Constitution, marginalized community is defined, and it makes reference to traditional community or indigenous community, etc. Since independence, we now have recent areas where one can say they are marginalized. And here I'm referring to, for example, slums in the urban areas have really spread. And now these slums are spreading into the rural areas where the living conditions are deplorable. I therefore recommend that a poverty alleviation fund be created to address the economic and social needs of the vulnerable groups in such areas. This will be implementing Article 43 as read with Article 21(3) of the Constitution, which makes specific reference to special measures being taken to assist the vulnerable people. And we don't have a specific fund for that. Of course, one can argue that every government program is addressing that issue. But we have indigent Kenyans who are really suffering, and such a fund can focus itself on such people. Implementation of the 2/3 gender rule. There have been failed attempts to achieve the 2/3 gender rule. I do recall that in many of the drafts of the proposed constitution, a clause similar to Article 1772 of the Constitution, which applies to gender top-up in county assemblies after elections, depending on the number of persons elected, was provided for to apply to the National Assembly and the Senate. Somehow, although it was a draft in the process of discussions and so on, somehow that clause was removed. And that clause only remained in reference to county assembly. I just recommend that an article similar to Article 1772 be reintroduced to apply to the National Assembly and the Senate. This should be accompanied by a current